From the Symbol of Salvation release, that is Armored Saint with Dropping Like Flies. That's what happens when that coronavirus gets around, so make sure you have plenty of lime to ward that shit off. So playing a little Armored Saint there only means one thing. Our heavy metal correspondent, Mr. Bob Nalbandian, is with us. What's going on, Bob?
What's going on, Neeley and Chris?
It's always
I turned my camera on just in case, so all the 3 female listeners of the CMS could see my pretty face.
There you go. Well, we always
so I knew when you cued in Armored Saint, I was coming up next. I like the professional cue in. In fact, I should hit up Armored Saint for royalties for the amount of times that you play them every time I'm featured on the show.
That's exactly right, Bob. Exactly right. If it wasn't for the early influences of Bob Nalbandian, we might not have an Armored Saint today.
I wouldn't go that far. But...
I would. I'll give credit where credit is due, God damn it.
There you go, Neeley.
Well, Bob, how are you, sir? We're always glad to have you on the show.
Well, always glad to be on, man. I'm looking forward to talk about the coronavirus for the next 4 hours.
Yeah, well, we did that last week. We did about a 6-hour show of all coronavirus-related stories.
I know that.
So we're trying to steer away from that. We're trying to be a little more uplifting, give the fans hope and light, and that's the reason why you've dropped in out of the clouds.
Absolutely. Get people's mind off that damn thing. Very
exactly.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to be here.
Well, you don't have the coronavirus, do you, Bob?
Well, I certainly hope not.
You sound a little hoarse tonight.
On your show, you never know.
You got that.
I've been staying in and to use a woke term. I've been using social distancing. So I think I'm okay. I've been just chilling out here, listening to the CMS, and was watching this really cool. I know you guys are into the whole Netflix documentaries. I just saw pop up today, Tiger King. Have you heard of that?
I saw the ad for it, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, well, I watched the little trailer. You know, when it comes on, you have the trailer. I'm going fuck, and I got 3 episodes in, and I'm like hooked. It was like, and I usually don't get hooked on these series things, but it's pretty cool. I won't get into it. I'll let the listeners check it out. But
get into it. What's it about? What's it about?
It's about the capturing of tigers and breeding them. All these tiger rescue. Well, there's these. I guess in Oklahoma, this one guy who's like considered the Tiger King.
Is his name the Rev?
No, it's not the Rev. Believe it or not, but it looks like him. A giant mullet. He's gay. He's.
It could be the Rev.
He actually is, but it's pretty funny. And then there's this crazy bitch who has this tiger sanctuary. Who I got into the point, now I won't get fully into it, but where she's accused of killing her husband, who was a multimillionaire, who got her, enabled her to do this tiger sanctuary, or big cat sanctuary, not all tigers. And they breed, hundreds of them. And it's just crazy, man. And then there's this other guy who's in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, who's got his own tiger zoo. And he's like this polygamist, has got like 4 wives. Dude, they're all nut jobs. He's got like 4 wives. The gay guy has 2 husbands, and this fucking crazy cat sanctuary bitch. Dude, it's just this. I was in the 3 episodes, and you're like, I mean, these people are nuts. I mean, it just shows how nutty and narcissistic and sociopathical these fucking crazy cat people are. It's they're like politicians. It's crazy. You should watch it, though. It's like I said, it's a 7-part episode. I got 3 episodes in, and I'll probably watch the rest of it tonight.
All right.
Well, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'll be watching that because I need something.
It's pretty fun.
Neeley, what was that documentary we watched with the guy that sucked the other guy's dick because he
that one where they were what was the name of that one where they were involved? No, it's some guy who convinced them that he could have sex with their young daughter.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. He kidnapped the young daughter or something, or he. Yeah.
And then somehow to make it right, he sucked the kidnapper's dick. It was
dude, that's the thing. These guys are just huge manipulators. Like like this woman in this thing, you just want to beat her ass. She kills her husband, and it's so obvious. All the the evidence leads right to her. And of course, it's in Florida where she is, where her sanctuary is, and they had her diary saying how she wanted to get rid of him and blah blah blah. I mean, just more evidence than the O.J. Simpson trial. Put it that way.
Right.
And she got away with it. It's crazy. It's pretty. I don't want to get too into it because, like I said, I'm only 3 episodes in. But dude, I love those conspiracy things, especially the ones on like the Jonestown. And did you see the one on the Bhagwan Ranish? What was it? Bhagwan Sharif in Oregon. You probably remember this in the early 80s. At least Neeley. Remember the whole Bhagwan conspiracy?
It sounds real familiar. It's been a long time.
This guy was supposedly this guru, from India, and he was all about helping people, and all he did was spend his money on, buying all these limousines, and then he had this crazy assistant chick from India. That's a good one. As is I even watched that yoga instructor guy, the guy that does the hot yoga, Bikram or whatever.
Okay.
That's a fucking crazy. All these guys are fucking nuts. They're all these narcissistic, total sociopaths, and that's a crazy one.
Well, but that just goes back to how people like a Charles Manson was able to hoodwink his people into doing shit for him because he also had that crazy about him.
Well, dude, they all want to be celebrities. They all want to be rock stars like Charles Manson. And in fact, in this Tiger documentary, the dude wants to be like this big. They all do. They want to be these big YouTube sensations. And the guy even puts out these records, these country records about big cats. Dude, it's fucking hilarious. And they all want to be, Charles Manson. Dude, the guy from Waco? What was...
David Koresh.
David Koresh. He was in a band.
Yeah, he had a rock band, yeah.
Well, check this out. I remember a good friend of mine who worked at KNAC. He did the local music show, Craig Williams. And in fact, I probably have the tape somewhere. He gave me a bunch of cassettes. He had the tape. He would send the tape in, and he said everyone knew this guy as this psycho guy. He wasn't going by David Koresh. It was another name, I believe. But he would call in and like, "You're going to play my demo this Sunday night." And the demo was just completely shit. It was awful. And they would just laugh. And they were like, put it on speakerphone with everyone there. And the guy would call in or have his messages. "You are going to play my demo on Sunday night or else," that kind of shit. But yeah, they're all wackos that were unsuccessful in becoming rock stars or TV evangelists or movie stars or whatever. So they form a cult.
Now, wait a minute, Bob.
Just like Stephen Piercy did, man. Like Stephen Piercy and his Illuminati. That fucker's the biggest cult, conspiracist around. That's true, right? Stephen Piercy. I knew Stephen back in the old days of rap when he was going by Stephen Eric. Remember that? And what was the first song they did on Metal Blade, on the Metal Massacre record? Tell the World. Think about that. Tell the world.
You're buying into
Stephen Eric Ferrantino. Come on, dude. If that's not a conspiracy.
That's 2 legs of the triangle.
No, but dude, it's just crazy. I love watching these kind of documentaries and hearing these stories, all these conspiracists, and now you got all these, coronavirus conspiracies going around. But it's amusing. It's keeping me amused while I'm in house arrest.
Well, what's more disconcerting, Bob, is not the fact that these people, want to be something and they have this certain thing about them. What's really frightening is they get people to believe in them and get,
they're master manipulators. You just watch these, and I get it. Some of these were, 10, 15 years ago, and people that, especially the Charles Manson back in the 60s, you had people on drugs, this hippie movement searching for something, and they look at this guy as their savior, So, no, but they're all master manipulators. But it's interesting. There was another one. Did you see the one on the guy on The Source? The Source was like a restaurant, like the first health food restaurant in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard. In fact, I went there a couple times. It was open up until the early 90s. But the guy ended up dying like in the 70s. This is all starting in the 60s. But he was a major conspiracist. He had this huge cult, the Source cult. But anyway, I don't know if that's still up there. I think it was called the Source family. That was a good one too.
Wow, you're really into it, Bob. I had no idea.
These conspiracies are a fun thing, especially now that I've been home. I've just been checking out a lot of this shit. So
that's the point. And with everybody at home, a lot of people are just making it up and floating it out there and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Well, they rely on Chris to bring them their next watching experience.
Yes. Well, you guys, actually, it's you guys that turned me on to a lot of these just through listening to the CMS. You turned me on to a lot of these different series and different shows on Netflix and Amazon Prime.
Well, look at you. Now that you got time to do it, you're just like, yeah, those fucking guys were right.
Yes, indeed.
Well,
so,
Bob,
hopefully we'll get the screening date rescheduled. I know Chris already had tickets and his hotel reserved and everything. In fact, we had quite a few people that were actually flying out of town for this, and it really sucks, but obviously it had to be done, and it was to be expected that we had to cancel the screening. So those that don't know, of course, the screening of the new Inside Metal movie, Bay Area Godfathers, that was scheduled for March 29th in San Francisco at the Roxy Theater, has been canceled, and we will postpone it, but it's just right now indefinitely. So I'm hoping we could do it. I mean, who knows how long this is going to last for, so it's kind of up in the air, but we do plan on getting the DVD and streaming out, hopefully just before summer or around the beginning of summer. So, I would hope we could do the screening before the DVD comes out. So, but we'll keep you all posted for sure.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, it does suck, and believe me, I'm bummed not about the plane flight as much as I was just looking forward to coming out and having some fun and seeing if I couldn't bury you and Toby in a bottle of whatever we were drinking. But I mean, but
you would bury us both, believe me.
But we'll get there. I mean, in the end, and this is what I keep telling everybody. It's like, don't worry about shit. It'll all work out, and
I'm not worried. But like I said, I knew it was going to happen. I'm just kind of bummed because we put a lot of work into, especially this one. We had a lot of people. I mean, dude, half the bands, if not more, that were featured in the movie were all coming down. We had a really, we had a packed house lined up. But we'll get them back whenever we get it rescheduled. But and the one in Oregon, we had one in Portland, Oregon as well, scheduled for April 3rd. Of course, that got canceled as well. Everything's canceled. So
sure,
but we'll get it back up and running.
Now, dude, being out there, man, I saw in the music news today that the drummer from Death Angel is like really, really sick. Like,
yeah, Will Carroll. I didn't get much information. I mean, I saw it on Craig Locicero's page and Danny Ship TV. A lot of people posting about it, and I assume it is the coronavirus because they all came back from tour together. Testament, Exodus, and Death Angel. I know Gary Holt and his wife apparently have it too, but they're not hospitalized as far as I know, like right. Will. It's scary. I mean, it is serious. It's a serious thing out there, and that's why I do take it serious as far as staying indoors and just going out when I for necessities, and that's what I advise other people to do. And I know the Bay Area, it's really bad. California in general, New York, California, Seattle. Obviously, I know they're the leading, but I think you'll be hearing a lot more cases coming out of California soon. But I'm glad to hear most people are taking it cool and cautious, and no rioting or looting has happened yet, so that's good. So hopefully, people will remain cool and calm, and if this fucked up media would just keep people cool instead of this stupid fear mongering all the time, and making people all this anxiety and craziness and shit going on. It'll blow over in a matter of time, I think. I hope.
Now, Bob, being out there and also being in contact with as many bands as you are, we just had Eric Ferentinos on, obviously, and he talked about he's going to do, what I think most are doing. They're going to settle in and write new music and try and have something ready to go once this all passes. Is that what you're hearing from other musicians as well, that they're all going to start writing and whatnot?
I think so. I mean, a lot of these guys are obviously creative, these musicians, and this allows them, the good thing is, take advantage of the time, use it to your advantage, and that's what I'm going to do. I just got off the phone with Matt earlier today, and we, said, dude, let's get some podcasts going. Because the one thing people are going to be making a killing on is the Netflix, the Amazon Primes. People are sitting at home going to just be streaming movies, or listening to podcasts or whatnot. So there will be a demand for that, or listening to music. So yeah, I would encourage all the musicians, to make the most out of it, make the most out of the time off and the time staying at home. Most of these guys have home studios, get together, write songs, put some stuff out. And, like I said, we're going to plan some Skull Sessions episodes. I already got one planned for Monday and a couple others that are planned down the road. So yeah, I think that's the case. I would hope so with a lot of musicians.
Right.
Well, Bob, you're no stranger to entertaining the masses. I'm glad you brought your Skull Sessions back. You've already been at it, a year and a half already?
God, I think it has been. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been great. And Matt, Matt Hartnett, shout out to Matt. He's been a blessing. He's the one. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have brought it back on. He offered to do it. He lives just about a half hour north, San Lorenzo, which is just south of Oakland. And he's got a little killer home studio he built with, nice microphones and everything. And he's producing it, putting everything together for me, doing all the work, getting it posted. So, yeah, it works good. It works good. He and I make a really great team, and I'm glad to. And as Chris knows, he's more into the. He's quite a few years younger, so he's more into. He grew up in New York. He's really into. He grew up in the New York hardcore scene and a lot of the stoner metal, and whereas myself, like Neeley, is more into the classic metal. Mostly 70s and a lot of 80s stuff as well. But so it's a good mix, and we work really well together. So yeah, thanks to Matt for that.
It has definitely added a great new element to the Skull Sessions because you really, Matt definitely challenges you to learn a lot more music and whatnot that I'm sure you just didn't listen to when it was out. And for obvious reasons, it just wasn't your thing. But, having Matt do that and having Matt bring in some new things, I've enjoyed it a whole lot more than the first run. I like the first run, but I really do enjoy the bouncing off, especially when you have a band that's clearly a Matt band on.
Right.
I like how when you get to a point where you don't know the band inside out, he does.
Totally.
And it really helps balance the show out. It's a really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He's he's got some good guests from New York. We had Leeway, we had Paris from Cro-Mags, and I love the Cro-Mags. I remember when they came out, that Age of Quarrel record, and I was a big fan of that, and so it's cool. It's cool to see these guys still out there making music and recording, and and I like that. I like that, that diversity, to use a hip term, which I've been using for several years, but it is that musical diversity of it's not just Neeley metal, it's Neeley and Aiken metal. So, again, we do everything based on the classic metal show. We have to use you guys as our biggest inspiration.
Well, after all, inclusion and diversity is our strength, Bob.
That is correct, Neeley. So I'm glad to see you and Chris are keeping that social distancing.
Well, Chris made an admission.
Apart.
Yeah, well, Chris made an admission to me. I mean, he's practicing social distancing. He's not even jacking off anymore.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I don't believe that, man. With all those sex toys that he's surrounded by every day, I don't believe that.
That is a bold-faced lie. My hand and dick are not practicing social distancing at all.
See, I told you, Neeley.
Oh well, hey, I thought it'd make a comical line anyway.
I know Chris better than that. Well, not that well. We've never met.
I hope you don't.
We have kept our social distancing, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Bob, I did want to. Right. I did want to talk to you about the most current Skull Sessions because it's one that I'm going to guess is not going to do the best numbers for you because it's a band a lot of people don't know. And I'll be the first one to admit I didn't know nothing about them either. But arguably the best podcast you've done to date, which is the Stone Vengeance, which I don't think is the most new one now. But talk a little bit about that and those guys' history and, why you decided to feature them, because that is that is a seriously great look at that late 80s, early 90s look of the music scene out there in Frisco.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. And actually, that is the latest current podcast. We did do, I think, an archive, an old one with Brian Slagle and Malcolm Dome on Iron Maiden, which was from back in like 2014. We just posted. But yeah, if you go to these Skull Sessions, I think it's number 8. I don't even remember the numbers. I don't, but you'll see it in their Stone Vengeance. And yeah, it was a band I was familiar with for many years, reading, like my buddy Ron Quintana's magazine, Metal Mania, and just hearing from other people in the San Francisco area. And I really took a like. I wasn't very aware of them because they didn't really at that time have any releases out. And as you know, Chris, I was a big fan of that band Sound Barrier from LA, and really supported them. They were an '80s all black heavy metal band that put out a great record, Total Control. And then Bernie and the drummer, who sadly had passed away, they had a other band called slips my mind now, Total Eclipse. Yeah, okay. Total Eclipse. And which actually featured a Vic Johnson, who's now playing in Sammy Hagar. And that was a good album too, just really. And these guys kind of remind me of that. And they've been together since 1978 in the Bay Area, played the Bay Area scene pre-Metallica and pre-thrash metal. So they were around, during the Y&T, before Y&T, when it was Yesterday and Today, during those days. So they got a huge history, and we have them featured in the movie. And my buddy and a co-producer and also the editor, Danny Shipman from Reality Check TV. My buddy John Stranansky, and he and I obviously wasn't that familiar with a lot. I knew of a lot of the Bay Area guys, but didn't have that personal connection to them. And between John Stranansky and Danny Shipman, they knew all these guys. And he said, I could get the guy, the Stone Vengeance. And I said, oh, yeah, man, I heard so much about that band, and I'd love to get them on. So he got them on Mike Coffey, who's, kind of the leader of the band, bassist, vocalist. And their segments that are in the movie, which you'll be seeing soon, were fantastic, So I hit him up. I said, dude, you guys want to do a podcast? So the entire band came down. We just had a blast. We just had total personality. And it's bands like that you just have this total instant click with, because old school metal guys, tape traders, we're talking about the old days of tape trading, all the, the early Merciful Fate demos and, Venom. And, these guys were doing covers of Venom and bands like that, an all black metal band. And they look like, total, hardcore gangsters doing, it's just like a body count kind of band, but they're all, old school hardcore metal guys and just nicest guys you can meet, man. Just great guys and great attitude. And the fact that they never broke up, I mean, you just got to really respect that fact, especially all the shit they've gone through and the, respect they never achieved, probably from being, an all black rock metal band. Because back then, and, we talk about in that podcast how, and I love Living Color, when they came out in like 88 or whatever, it became like this novelty and people consider them, like the first all black hard rock band. And it's like, no, there were others, there were a lot of others. There was that band Death, that punk band. There was a band from Cincinnati called Death too, right? Another band that I think you had on your show once. So there were a lot of bands that just never got the respect. And the fact that Stone Vengeance kept going without getting any kind of record deals or major record deals. They got a few things, that they got in Europe, but it's just a great attitude. I mean, they got fucked over by some, but they still have that attitude and they still persevere and they're just enjoying it, man. They true metal guys, that just love it, love performing, and you just gotta respect that, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it was such a cool listen, and as somebody that was, young in the early '90s, was in my 20s, like 20, 21, 22. Hearing stories about some of those clubs and stuff. And this is after they had already been a band for, 10, 15 years. And they were talking about on your podcast about how they just didn't get respect. And even after all that time, they're opening bands for shitty bands that didn't have any right to be headliners and whatnot. It was just a fascinating look at that whole era. maybe it's just me because I remember that era so much,
Right.
but you know, it really was a fascinating look at that stuff, man.
Yeah, I love that. And I love getting and digging really into that. And that's what I think we did, you know, obviously with the previous Inside Metal titles on the LA scene, with the Pioneers getting to the clubs from, you know, the Starwood and all these clubs that are no longer. And here in San Francisco, all, you know, you don't have the Stones. There were 3 Stones. You don't have Ruthie's. You don't have the Omni. All these clubs are gone. Wolfgangs. I mean, they're all gone, you know. So it's really great to hear those stories and to bring it back. And all the artists really appreciate that. And just to bring back those old memories of how it was. And that band busted their balls. And we lived off that shit. I know, you know, me growing up in LA, I mean, going to these club shows were just as important to me as going to these arena rock shows. You know, we would go to the country club and, you know, and even major bands. I remember, you know, Merciful Fate and Exciter coming down, Queensryche doing their very first show outside of Seattle when their EP first came out on the independent label 206 Records. And, you know, Loudness came out, you know, for the first time. And, you know, and then you had Armored Saint and Metallica Abattoir. I remember that bill. Motorhead playing there a couple times. Malice, all these great bands. You know, and they were just as important. You know, these shows were huge. You know, and yeah, you miss those days. And this is a great way to bring back those memories too, and give a little history to a lot of the younger people that will never experience that.
Right, and you know what is missing now, Bob, versus that time period. It's not necessarily the great lineups that were on the shows, and I know you'll remember this, and Neeley, you'll remember this too. It was, you could go to the club and you could just meet like big rock stars, like not like little rock star guy that's in, you know, band that you might have heard of on the Concrete Corner once or something. I mean, it was not surprising to go into the Stone and run into Kirk Hammett or to run into Dave Mustaine or somebody in these clubs back in that era. And this is when they were big bands. But that was a big part of that club scene, was that you could meet big bands. And that attitude, I guess, has just 100% gone away. You cannot meet a rock band in a club anymore. And it's really sad, because that was, for me personally, that was way more important to me than who was on the stage. You know, when I know you've listened to the show, Bob, when I talk about my time in San Francisco at the Omni or the Stone or whatever whatever club, the story usually is about, well, I'm sitting at the bar with Jim Martin from Faith No More or Zakk Wylde or, you know, or Pantera guys before they were famous or whatever. You know, the story is very rarely about, you're not going to believe who I saw on stage. It was Road Crew with Davey Vane and Steven Adler. You know, it's always more about the hang, because it was the one, and I'm assuming it was the same in LA as it was in San Francisco. The hang back then was a real melding of the fans and the bands, and a lot of the musicians were just guys like me that could play guitars and got picked up by some of these bands. That's where they all met. It was like a meeting spot for so many of those bands.
Totally, man, totally. And you're giving away all your lines in the movie, Chris.
Oh, am I?
A lot of them. Dude, so true. I mean, of course, I grew up in LA, and the LA club scene, and it was all the same. You know, all the bands went out and supported each other. Or it was just cool for the hang. They might have talked shit about each other, but that's how it was then. It was that competitive vibe. You know, you might talk shit in the Bay Area because you shit about, you know, the glam versus thrash. But all these guys, you know, we interviewed the guys in Exodus and Testament, all these bands, they were saying they were going to the Vane shows. They were going to the Jet Boy shows. They were going to the Head On shows and the Le Mans shows. And they were going there, you know, they would always say, well, we'd go there just to pick up on the chicks, you know, but because, of course, the thrash shows had no chicks in the audience. So they would go to a lot of these shows. But the point is, they all got along together. You know, obviously, Davey Vane, he produced the first couple of Death Angel albums. And so, you know, they would talk shit about each other, of course, when they're, you know, on the radio, on KUSF or whatever. But, you know, I think everyone had a respect for each other. That's how it was in LA. It was that competitiveness. Oh, you guys suck, whatever. But at the shows, I mean, I remember going to so many Troubadour shows, the country club shows, going backstage into the dressing room and seeing, the guys in Armored Saint and Metallica together with the guys in Black and Blue and Ron Keel hanging out and all of us all together in one room, the guys in Sound Barrier. And it's like, it was like a giant family and everyone got along. Everyone respected each other as musicians and would talk to certain guys. Hey, how do you get this guitar turned on? This is, man, I love, And then, of course, when they go out, and then people ask them about, some of these bands, it was, we blow them away, kind of thing. But it was a cool hang. And that was where, like you said, everyone, would hang. Dude, at the country club show, that was where I first met Ronnie James Dio. I came up to him when I was fucking 17 years old with my little paper fanzine and asked him to do an interview. He fucking gives me his home phone number. It says, call me anytime. I call him up. He answers the phone. He invites me over to his house in Tarzana, his original house on Donna Lane. I still have his address and phone number written on the magazine. And he goes, well, come on over. Well, and I was over there for like 3 hours. I'm a 17-year-old kid talking to fucking Ronnie James Dio, and I met him at the country club, and he was there to see Yngwie. I think Yngwie with Steeler when Ron Keel had the Steeler lineup with Yngwie, Rick Fox, and Mark Edwards. Right. So that's you just ran into so many cool people, and of course L.A. That was where stars were at the Troubadour back in the early 80s. You always saw David Lee Roth. They had this front bar, stretch bar. David Lee Roth would be drunk off his ass. You guys would always be at the bar, and the guys in Wasp and whatever, and it was everyone was there. If it was a metal show, people knew, and that was their way of promoting themselves too. They would get all decked out. Motley Crue would look just like Hulk on the back of the Too Fast for Love record, with
right.
their hair all up and whatever, and it was a way of self-promotion, and it was good times, man. Whether you were into that music or not, I was not into the whole glam thing back then, but fuck it was fun, especially the after parties. I'll tell you, man, some of those, Motley Crue or, Rat parties or some of the parties that, mutual friends of mine had these parties and all these artists would show up, and man, fuck, dude, it was some fun shit.
Dude, one of the most funny things that I remember, it was a common line. Like if you would sit at the bar, like I was such a young kid, and I would go up to whoever I recognized, and I mean, the rules were based. So I, of course, ignored that rule, and I would immediately go up to whoever was sitting at the bar and be like, hey man, can I buy you a beer or what? Can I buy you a drink, whatever. And I would buy.
That's the proper line, though. You go up to them, you offer them a drink, you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And they would all say yes. But the one thing that I must have heard 100 times from 100 different band guys, they would bring somebody else over and they would introduce you, and they didn't know me. I had just met them for buying them, and they would just be like, hey, you got to meet this guy. He's going to be famous someday. That was the line, was he's going to be famous someday. And it was kind of like 50-50. Some of them really did become famous someday. And then a lot of them were like, all right, well, you were in the Astrological Cowboys, and that was your claim to fame. And who the fuck is that? And, nobody remembers those bands. But it was just such a different time that is almost impossible to explain to people today, because especially the younger crowd today, all they know is paid meet and greets and, cattle call photos with the band and stuff like that. They don't remember the time when, I say this all the time. I mean, Zakk Wylde has been a friend of mine, for a lot of years. And I literally met the guy at the bar. I didn't meet him through being in radio or anything. I met him as a fan of the No More Tears album, and I recognized him from the video, and I sat down next to him and was like, hey, man, want a beer? And he was like, yeah, brother. It's just typical Zakk does before he had the beard or everything. He's like, yeah, brother, what are we drinking? And immediately we started
drinking. Boy days, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But we had a few beers, and we kept in touch for years.
Dude, that's how they were, especially, like the heavier bands, the thrash bands. But they were all about it. And they were a lot of the LA bands, some of the bands, Motley Crue and other bands. They would play the rock star, a lot of times. So they wouldn't really give you the time of day, or they would, always just be on the lookout for chicks, or, kind of like, hey man, thanks. But, the Bay Area guys, I think, are, well, I'm just the more heavier, the thrash guys. Like, same with the guys in Armored Saint. They were just so down there. You came up to them, you were instant bros, You could easily talk to them and approach them. And I think the more down-to-earth bands, which, a lot of the Bay Area bands were, I never made it to these. I was well aware of all the shows in the early 80s. Back then it was expensive to drive up from LA to San Francisco and get a hotel. So I never saw those early shows. I was there in the late 80s and early 90s. So I caught still when, the Stone and the Omni and all those clubs were still around. But, it was by then that the scene had changed quite a bit. But the fact that, these guys were fans themselves, everyone grew up on the fans of the new wave of British heavy metal, the Iron Maiden, Saxon, Tigers of Pantang, Venom, And the Bay Area had these record stores that made it easy access to the band, whereas in LA, you had to drive many times 60 miles to go to certain stores to find some of the, the neat records imports or some of the other, more rare imports. So, all the bands were cool back then. It was, it was a community. It was definitely this community vibe back then, for sure. Neeley, you're so silent out there.
Well, Chris is very engaged here.
Yes. Do you have nothing to say, Neeley?
No, Chris got the floor, so.
Yeah, but you're on camera, dude. You got to at least, do some kind of a show, do like some of a strip tease or something to keep the CMS fans motivated.
Yeah, well, I'm engineering the show, Bob. I'm working behind the scenes. I'm working my magic.
Boring.
Z.
Right, Nostradamus? Oh.
Nice.
Well, Bob, what I was going to ask you, though, seriously, you brought up, back in the day when radio was a force, that's where a lot of people got all their information from. This is when DJs kind of had a little more freedom to have guests or feature records or, do different shows. What do you prefer? I mean, do you prefer the old days when you had to wait for your favorite local disc jockey or favorite show to come on, like on a KNEC, KLOS, KMET, any one of those stations? Or do you prefer where we're at today with the internet, being that, obviously you got your Skull sessions, we do the CMS here, and there's a ton of other shows out there. Looking back, what do you prefer? Do you long for the old days of radio, or do you like where we're at today as far as technology and, the platforms that are available to true fans?
Very good question, Neeley. Very interesting. And I miss those old days. And there was something special about discovering a new band, on vinyl or hearing it on the radio for the first time, where, everyone hears it at once. And especially when it comes to local bands. I mean, like I said, on KNEC, the local music show, you would hear, that's where you discover bands like Guns N' Roses, Love, Hate, whatever local bands, or Tesla for the first time, Cinderella, they'd be live in the studio. And I remember even KROQ, when they were kind of back, we're talking late 70s or into the early 80s. I remember Angus Young would pop by the studio, and this was during maybe before Highway to Hell came out, or when Highway to Hell first came out. He would be in the studio with the DJs, and it wasn't playing. He would just pop in. Hey, we're playing tonight. And he'd be in the studio for like 2 hours. Rob Halford, I remember, after they did Judas Priest did a show at the Starwood. And I'm this, 14-year-old kid listening to, discovering. And I knew about Priest, but they played like about 20 Judas Priest songs while talking to Halford. And it was cool, man. It was great.
Yeah,
and, that's how the local music shows, where they'd have local bands without albums, and bands like Snow in the late 70s, and you would discover all these cool bands. So that I definitely miss. But I was talking about this to someone, because everyone's like, "Oh man, it sucks the way it is, all the streaming and all the way things are." But if it wasn't for, obviously you got to progress when it comes to technology and whatever. If it wasn't for that, just think about what would rule. Because I remember in the late 90s, just before like Napster hit and all that, you would go to record stores major record stores, unless you went to like a Tower or something like that, and you had to pay a lot more money for imports, you couldn't find anything except the commercial pop shit that they would just shove down your throats. Mm-hmm. So I think it would have got just way worse, where bands like today, like a band like Red Rain or anything like that, would not be able to exist, because no labels. There would obviously be, the majors and of course some independent labels, but they would have to invest money into it, and for them to get their records in the record store. Now you could have billions of records out. Before, when you had record stores, you could only carry so many records, and this was, the days of the boy bands and all that, and the, Britney Spears and all that. So that was just shoved down everyone's throats. So, you see all these bands, like new wave of British heavy metal bands, making this comeback, and all these, even the 80s metal bands, they were all dead in the late 90s. I would see, Cinderella play at a half-empty club, and Saxon play at the Whiskey in front of 50 people. And it's like, man, this is so, and now they're playing, in front of 800 people again. So obviously it gives the people, the right to choose what they want to hear, instead of getting shit jammed. You're going to still get shit jammed down your throat, whether you're on Spotify or whatever, to what their favorites are. But you can easily discover new music. Today, you had to invest in discovering new music. You saw a record, you didn't know if it was good or not. You looked at the cover, you go, this looks pretty metal. This looks like it'll be good. And you invest, $10, $11 at the time, make it home, and you go, fuck, this sucks.
Right. That's why Chris stole his music from Gold Circle.
That's right.
Well, that's why we were trading tapes back in the day and recording music. We'd go to record stores, especially when imports were so expensive at $13. I'd go with like 2 or 3 other friends, and we would each buy like 3 or 4 albums at $13 each or whatever, and spend all our fucking money, our paychecks, go home and record off each other's albums and stuff.
Yeah.
And then when we had enough money, the good albums we'd usually buy, because then there was some pride in ownership, owning a record, which is just gone now. If you had the collection, owned, the Bow Wow Japanese import, not Bow Wow Wow. Sorry, Eric. I had to bring that up, but that was like a rarity. And the Japanese imports back then were like $20, because the vinyl was like pristine and it was, real rare. But you had that in your collection. That was cool, and there was that kind of thing, So yeah, I do miss that. I do miss those days.
Do you have any? Are you a collector of vinyl, Bob?
Dude,
do you still have a lot of your vinyl or not?
I don't want to talk about it. I sold all my vinyl in the late 90s, before eBay, before all that. I had it. I was living in LA, in apartments, in Hollywood, 90, 91, 92, I think around 97. I didn't have vinyl. I had vinyl for a while. Then when CDs came out, I couldn't, carrying all the vinyl was a bitch. So I had it in my mom's closet in Huntington Beach, just stacks of vinyl. And she got to the point where she was going to throw it all out. She said, get rid of this shit. So I sold it all to a collector back then. And, whatever, it is what it is. At the time, it was a fair price, but now seeing some of these on eBay going for $300-400 a pop, I could have made, 100 times more than I sold it for if I sold them individually. But it is what it is. I don't, look back. But since then, I stopped collecting. I mean, I move around so much, as you guys know, that I keep it very minimal. Even my CDs, I got rid of most of my CD collection. So,
well, since we're on camera and you can see behind me, you can see
that, Neeley.
You can see the CMS collection.
Yeah. Okay, so you got a lot of fucking CDs. You're the cool man on the block.
I am. I'm badass.
He's got it all right there on his phone.
There's a collection.
It's convenient. I got to say, as much as I do like the whole CD concept, dude, the technology today has made you such a lazy fuck when you could pop up a song within, 20 seconds or 10 seconds on Spotify or whatever, rather than having to look through your collection, get the CD out, or same with DVDs. I've got all these DVDs, and most of the shit I just stream. It's like, it's just a bitch to go to the player and put. And even though there are some cool extra scenes and whatever, so sometimes it's cool to watch, but it is we've become such a lazy society because of the new technology. But yeah.
But you know what, dude? It really, at least in my opinion, it comes down to what you're looking for too. Like I'll give you a great example this week or in the last 2 weeks, because it might have been last week. I didn't discover it, but I discovered for my own personal listening a new band that I am loving to death called Code Orange, which I know they're not. I know they're not.
Been together for quite a few years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been around for a little while. I had never listened to them ever. Never heard them. Never really was aware of them. And I was listening to the new Lamb of God single, and with Google, I use Google Play Music as my music player. And one of the options when you go to play a song is you can either play the song or you can press what it calls start radio. And what it does is it'll start playing music behind the song you're listening to that they think is like that music. And
that's 2 songs at once playing?
No, it's like a playlist. It's like it's an automated playlist based on whatever algorithm they use based on that song. So I was listening, and it was playing some stuff I knew, Black Dahlia Murder and, stuff like that. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then all of a sudden it kicked up with this Code Orange. I was like, what in the fuck is this? And I was like, wow, this is fucking phenomenal. And I discovered the record, and listened to the whole album. And now I've listened to it about 25 times because I discovered it in the new streaming way. I know that's the way it's intended to work. I know people don't, but I know that older folks like us generally don't do that. We're not discovering music anymore. We're listening.
People still are. People our age, and of course, that's how younger kids discover it. But it is, you always get suggestions or, play next or whatever, or they'll build their own playlist for you. A lot of times, Spotify, I know, does that. And, some of them, have gotten way better. Hold on, I got to put in the plug here. Battery's about to run down. And, no, but yeah, sometimes I remember when they first started or when Pandora started, the stuff they recommended was just horrible. It was nothing like it. It was just shit. Yeah, but I think they've got a lot better now.
Yeah, when you started with Pandora, you'd try and play Megadeth, and the next song would be Bon Jovi. And you're like,
exactly. Well, I got a funny story. I remember I was living up in Northern California, Chico at the time. So this was around 2004, I think. Right. And when I had never heard of Pandora. I guess they had just come out. All the college kids knew it, and one of my buddies, a college kid there, says, "Hey, you want to come with me?" What they did, which was smart, they would go to the college campuses, the guys that ran Pandora, and do these lectures. And he goes, "Hey, I got a free pass to go." It was a nighttime thing at one of the places, and he said, "I go, yeah, I'll check it out." I go, "What the fuck is this Pandora?" He's like, "Dude, you don't know Pandora? Oh, check it out." I'm like, "Listen to it." I go, "This is, this is basically worse than Napster." You could, and they killed Napster, and now they're having this because back then I'm like, this is crazy that you could do this, And I went there, and the guys were the 2 biggest nerds talking about it,
right?
And and I asked the question because I'm not going who. Because he was the guy was showing me my buddy. He's like, "Oh, you could say," I go like, "Say Judas Priest radio," and he would do that. And they'd have bands that would be like Judas Priest on the radio, and I'm like, "This isn't like Judas." And I said, "Do like Armored Saint radio," and they actually had Armored Saint radio, but like you said, they would play Poison. Some guy just went and said, "Oh, L.A. bands," and just were playing. It's like, dude, this. And so I asked the guy. I got up. I said, "Hey, are some of the band members upset? Are the bands upset that you're controlling them to say that, hey, this band sounds like this band, and what if they hate that band that you're pitching to them, saying it?" And he, "What are you talking about?" And he got like this really pippy attitude. We do the demographics and we check and we, everyone that listens to us, like, fuck you, you fucking idiot. And this total like nerds obviously do nothing about music. And from that point on, I just had this real hatred of that whole streaming kind of thing, because it's like, you're controlling. Now, if the bands had to say, like I know on certain iHeartRadio or whatever. Megadeth had a channel, or what's the place that they have the channel?
Radio?
What is it?
Gimme Radio, the new one?
That's it. And at least Dave Mustaine is the program director, or or the band control what they play. But this, the guys, these computer nerds are controlling what, Armored Saint Radio is. It's like, this is stupid. But anyway, I just had to know that. So fuck those guys.
Yeah.
Well, since you threw that out, Gimme Radio, if for people that like heavier music, that is the shit, man. I love Gimme Radio, because now not only does Mustaine have his own show, but a bunch of musicians have shows. Yeah. And it really plays into learning a lot of, because those guys, they're out on tour and they see a lot of bands that we don't see. And they expose a lot of it on Gimme Radio. Gimme Radio fucking rules. I listen to that a lot.
And plus, like the Mustaine Radio or Megadeth Radio, he'll play a lot of his early influences. So you'll hear, a new wave of British heavy metal bands, Praying Mantis or Quartz, or bands you would, or Budgie, from even, the 70s and, stuff like that. So it is cool. It is cool. And for younger fans, I think it's a great way for them to, get turned on to the classic metal of the 70s and 80s.
Yep, it is.
Yep.
Agree.
Definitely. Come on, Neeley. You're shifting around in your chair. I know you want to say something. Speak, Neeley. Speak.
No, I'm good, Bob.
Is he on, Chris? Oh. Or is he just like a mannequin?
No, it's him.
No, it's just a cardboard cutout.
Well, speaking of which, you guys, you're obviously familiar. I know nobody in America knows this band except your buddy Jim Nostradamus and probably a few other CMS guys, but the band Status Quo, who are a British band. They're literally as in the rest of the world, they're as big as the Rolling Stones, literally. Mm-hmm. They did a video. You remember that rock all over the world? Is that what it's called? Rock and roll. What the fuck is the name? Rockin' all over the world. It was kind of their first hit in the 80s when they did the Live Aid. That's where a lot of people discovered them, when they did Live Aid, and they are already about 10 or 15 years into their career. But anyway, they had a music video, and dude, this is total fucking Spinal Tap. I heard they took the music video down, but you used to be able to watch it on YouTube. They fired their bass player. Their bass player was in Australia, and they call him up. He was on vacation. They go, hey, you got to come back. We're doing a video. He's like, fuck you guys. I'm on vacation. He goes, well, if you don't come back, we're going to replace you for the video. And he's like, fuck you guys. You ain't going to replace me. So they used a blow-up doll to play bass. And they put I swear to God, you could probably find it somewhere. I heard they took the video down, but they would scan the camera so you don't really notice. But there's this one segment where you could totally see it's a fucking blow-up doll, and it looks just like the bass player, Alan. And he's got a bass on him, and he's like bobbing his head. It's fucking hilarious. But they replaced him with a fucking mannequin. So if that ain't Spinal Tap, I don't know what is.
That's awesome.
Too funny.
Hey, Bob, real quick, since you're out there, did you hear that they closed Slim's this week?
Yeah. That was kind of the rumor for a while, and I think they use this whole thing as an excuse now that, businesses are fucking hurting, man. And Slim's, I think Golden Voice took over Slim's a little while ago, and Golden Voice is taking over everything. And, I know there was a lot of politics with that, and I know Boz Scaggs owned Slim's. I believe he's still, I don't know how involved he is, but I believe he's still part of an owner. But dude, I saw some great shows there. I saw Exodus, Death Angels, saw Udo there. Great venue. All the clubs are closing, man. I think this gives them, this is kind of the nail in the coffin. It's like, well, fuck, we're going to be closed for a month or two. How are they? And in San Francisco, they're right in the middle of fucking downtown San Francisco, and it's a big, Slim's isn't a small. It's like for a club, it's like an 800 seater. So, I'm sure the rent on that is pretty hefty. I'm wondering how the Sunset Strip clubs are going to survive too. The Whiskey, the Roxy, the Rainbow. That's prime real estate. You got to know, the rent there is going to be awfully high. So, they say those clubs are mandated, or they've got historic values, so they can't tear them down. But you never know, dude. If it's that right there on Sunset Boulevard, they've been building hotels like crazy. They tore down the House of Blues to build a giant high rise. So you never know, man. But yeah, it's sad to see. I mean, going back to that, any club that's doing live music, especially Slims that did so many great, hard rock and metal shows. It's not surprising, but yeah, true.
Well, I think the internet probably kind of put a kibosh on the live music experience for the small clubs, because it's just easier to just go to YouTube and just watch it on YouTube instead of heading out and spend $20-$30, to get into a club and see a live band. So
yeah, but it's not the same.
It's not the same. I know it's not the same. I agree. Even Chris in the last 2 years has actually gotten out to see a lot of shows.
Yeah, Bow Wow Wow. Yeah, he's going out banging his head and just supporting the metal cause, man.
Well, if he didn't have that hard rock or the what is it? What's the name of that casino down the street there from you, Chris?
The Roxino.
Yeah, the Roxino. The Roxino is so close that it's hard for him to pass up going to see shows.
Yeah, it's great when it's 10 minutes. It puts a lot less risk in that DWI when it's 10 minutes away.
Dude, you gotta start taking Uber and Lyft. I actually do agree with that one fan that called in that you gave him a bunch of shit for.
I really should Uber.
But it's so easy. I mean, put it on your phone app. It'll cost you $10. I mean, if you do end up getting a DUI, it's going to cost you $10,000 minimum. So, you've been lucky so far, but fucking for an Uber app, a $10 ride to a club there and back, you don't have to worry. You could drink till you fucking have to crawl home, But now, of course, I guess, they still got that going, but, I guess now all the clubs are closed, so you don't have to worry about that. So.
Yeah, now I don't have to worry about any of it. Now I can watch. I'll be honest, not that it's a replacement, and I agree with you, it's definitely not the same experience, but I am so thankful to all the people that have illegally and legally put up so many concerts right now. There is some great concert footage of so many bands out there right now, that you can watch, whether it's, your Iron Maidens or Kiss or,
Have they been out there for a while, or are they just popping up now, coming to attention? Or because I've seen a lot of that. Like there's the Sullen Arena in Fresno.
Mm-hmm.
They did a lot of shows. A lot of shows that didn't come to L.A. or the bands in L.A. They would do the festivals like the Cal Jam or the California Music Festival. We're talking late 70s, but they would do a pit stop. Fresno, for those that don't know, it's between San Francisco and LA. It's mid California, and a lot of bands would play the Sullen Theater, which is about 10 maybe 8 or 10,000 people.
Right.
And UFO with Michael Shaker, 78, Bon Scott, with AC/DC, 1978. Some great stuff I've been seeing, lately that they have the full concert. So, yeah, absolutely.
I watched, and I'm not even a Kiss fan, but I watched it was a killer show from, I think, Tokyo or somewhere, of Kiss on all night or some Asylum tour or whatever. And I was like watching this, and I was like, holy fuck, is this clean? And it wasn't audience shot. It was definitely like professionally shot and professionally mixed. And I was like, how have I never seen this before? But, I guess with everybody home, people are uploading their bootlegs and their,
I don't know. Some of them could be just like, a TV. You got to remember, even like before MTV and during MTV, they had all those MTV concerts.
Yeah,
but even before that, you had Rock Palace. You had all these, of course, Don Kirshner's. I've been getting addicted to a lot of those old Don Kirshner.
Right.
I remember those as a kid, going downstairs, sneaking downstairs at, 11, 12 years old, and at 2 a.m. watching Black Sabbath, and trying not to wake up my mom and dad.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, now you can just see all that stuff on there, which is great. But I think a lot of them were shot, especially in there were so many shows in Japan. If you said that was in Tokyo, I'm sure there were so many different professionally shot shows that they used for Japanese TV or whatnot that we might have never seen. And again, that is a great thing about the internet and YouTube. It's international, and you can see all this great footage shot in, Copenhagen to, South Korea to wherever,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is, especially in such a dead time like right now. know, where you can't do much. At least you can rock out a little bit with, stuff. It's nice that you can kind of go out there and search whatever band you like and your favorite era of them, and you can generally find some footage. And it's like, okay, this is pretty solid.
Definitely. What about you, Neeley? What are your thoughts on that?
On being able to, on being able to, search out things. In fact, I sent something to Chris here earlier this week. I think it was Paul Carrick, and they were on, what was it? Midnight Express or something like that?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they were, I don't know if you watched that video, Chris, but the way that they had to lip sync and pretend like they were playing, even back in the day, it was so clear that they were doing these music videos or music appearances
Midnight Express or Midnight Oil.
No, I think it was Midnight Express or something like that.
Midnight Express, yeah.
And it was just hysterical. It was Ace. How long?
Right.
And they were all like acting like they were rocking out on the stage, but it was very, very clear that none of them had their instruments plugged in or anything. And the drummer, you could tell he was like not even tapping his drums and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they were playing the studio track while they were playing, and they were just lip syncing along. Just to
some
stare.
of those are hilarious. Like a lot of the Top of the Pops are like that too, because a lot of these bands, they never did lip syncing, so they're like, and you could tell they're just like completely like, what the fuck do I do? It's and sometimes they'll have just the vocals live and everything else on tape.
Yeah.
So, right.
Well, that's what this Ace was. This was Top of the Pops.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of those Top of the Pops were like that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's hilarious. It is funny watching those old things.
I'll tell you the best ones of those to watch are anything Dick Clark American Bandstand with rock bands, because they didn't have rock bands on that often. They always had like Donna Summer and disco and dance shit, because that's what American Bandstand was. So when they would have rock bands, the camera guys didn't know how to shoot it, and the producers didn't know how to shoot it, and they would constantly be catching the wrong angle of somebody being like 3 feet away from the microphone while you heard vocals and stuff. So fucking funny to watch. If you pull up any, like, there's a classic one of Bon Jovi on they were doing Runaway, I think was the song they were doing, or She Don't Know Me, one of the two first hits. And there's a shot, it's like a side angle shot of John Bon Jovi to where you can see that he's probably 2 feet to the right of the microphone, and you still hear vocals coming out. And he's so far from the microphone, it's just sad how bad it looks. But it's because their producers and their camera guys just didn't know how to shoot rock bands. They only knew how to shoot single performance. I mean, you think about it, a Donna Summer, you have a camera in the front, and then you have an overhead that's also in the front.
Then you have a camera on her ass. Oh,
you don't even have that. You just have the front shot where you just have her. You have the overhead that shows the band fake playing behind her, and that's all you had. Yeah. So it's camera one, camera two, camera one, camera two for people that know anything about video. Then they would get these metal bands, and they didn't know what to do with them, so they would have like 4 or 5 cameras, and they were at angles. They weren't straight on the keyboard player, straight on the drummer, straight on the guitar player. They would kind of shoot at angles, because they also kept trying to make it so they were invisible when they would show the fucking idiots dancing.
Right.
So
Soul Train was the best.
Yeah, Soul Train was, but at least they had the right music. Soul Train didn't stray too far from the Soul Train music, but yeah.
Well, the interviews were even better when they did the rock bands. Like you see, I remember Y&T were on there once, and you can tell Dick Clark knows nothing about this band or nothing about these bands, and the interviews are even more funny. Yeah.
Hey, you're yesterday and today. Is that right, guys?
Exactly. So, yeah, Neeley. So what's going on with you, man?
Just
speak up.
Just work, Bob. Just work.
Yeah. So you are still working. Then.
I am still working.
Allowing you to go to work.
Well, as of yesterday, the the governor of Illinois announced his declaration of the shelter in home. So I got to see what that brings on Monday. We'll find out.
Wow. So how is business? Is there people actually buying?
Oh yeah. I'm about where I'm at normally at this time of the year. So we'll see. Huh. I'm sure we're going to take a hit this month, but who knows?
Right on, dude. Right on, Neeley.
Yeah, man. But
I'm glad you're giving me like Don Dokken time, man. We've been on here for nearly an hour, huh?
All right.
I feel so privileged.
Well, Bob, the fans always like when you come on anyway.
Well, of course, as they should.
As they should.
And let's be honest, telling war stories right now about great musical times is a whole lot more interesting than saying, well, we're going to be homeless in 3 months because of the virus.
Yeah.
Like, fuck that. Let's just talk about tunes and relax.
Absolutely.
Well, Bob, I do have a question. I know we asked this question before, and I don't know if this ever circled back around. But, being that the Inside Metal series has, pretty much featured West Coast stuff, you obviously did the LA, and now you're doing the Northern California music and whatnot. Do you know, or has there been any discussion or talk of doing, an Inside Metal type thing for, let's just throw Cleveland in there, because Cleveland obviously, at some point had a very influential effect on, music at some point. When Chris and I were doing a live broadcast at Joe Cleon's place, a lot of local bands that got some recognition, whether it was here in the States or they made a splash over in Germany or Europe, more there than the States, but are still active today. And they have a catalog and they still, perform on a limited basis. Is there any interest in doing any kind of an Inside Metal, like Midwest bands or, East Coast bands or anything like that?
We've talked about it. It's a matter of, of course, see the thing about, obviously, with not just Inside Metal, but with DVDs and documentaries of this kind, of this caliber in general, there's not a huge budget to work with. It's not a big money maker in that sense. So with me, being from LA, living in LA and doing the 3 LA Inside Metal titles, and now me living in the Bay Area, and I was, in Sacramento for a lot of the times I was doing the interviews, which was close enough to San Francisco. I was right there. I didn't need to get a hotel or whatever. I had enough friends. I stayed at people's homes that I knew if I needed to, or my editors here, my camera guy is, Alex, who lives here. So it was convenient. So, doing something in New York or in the Midwest, would require a lot more. I'd have to fly out there, stay there. If we do something, we were talking about a New York one. And in fact, when I was with you at the Metal Hall of Fame Awards, I was talking to your buddy Munzie.
Yeah.
And Munzie took me aside. He goes, dude, if you want to do one on New York, and I love Munzie. He's a great guy. And, and he said, hey, dude, I'd love to work with you. I've got a place. You could stay at my place. I know all these bands from back then. So, and that was a great offer. And that was really great of him to offer that. And, and like I said, if I do that, I would want to bring in a producer, someone that lived in that area of New York, that breathed it, that, and that's what I did with here in the Bay Area. I got John Stranansky, who was at all those shows, the first, Metallica shows when they played out here and all those early shows. And of course, the guy from Reality Check TV, Danny Shipman, they grew up here. So, or at least we're here since, the late 80s. So, they knew all the people and that, so, it's a little bit complicated and it's a lot of fucking work to do. As you know, to set up all the interviews. And, for me, it was very convenient. The LA ones were great. I was right in LA. I knew most of these bands. It was a matter of making a couple phone calls. We did the majority of the interviews at Joe Floyd's studio, either inside his studio or on his, he has a great patio where we probably recognize the view where we shot many of them. So that was convenient. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I would love, I would like to keep it going, but it is a lot of work. So I've got. I can't mention anything now, but I am involved in another major documentary. Big.
Well, you could talk about it, Bob. I mean, it is something that I'll let the cat out of the bag, Bob. It's a documentary on the CMS.
I'll have to keep you guys strung along for a little while, but it's looking pretty good. So we'll see what happens, man. I enjoy doing it. It's not a matter of the money. It's a matter of as long as I could make enough to keep me going and to pay for the expenses and all that. It's a lot of fun for me. So and me, I'm fucking single with no kids. I got no fucking expenses. So I'm poorer now than I was 20 years ago. So I don't care. I'm doing what I enjoy. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I'll let the cat out of the bag. The next big video or next big documentary is on the history of the CMS.
That is correct. It's all about Chris and Neeley.
That's exactly right.
Actually, I was thinking about doing one on Jim Nostradamus on his the whole Nostradamus theme. Don't you think that was so big? No? Yes? Maybe?
You would have to get a lot of sign-offs on the likeness rights of Richie Blackmore because he's obsessed.
This is correct. Is he in the chat room? I haven't even been in there.
Yeah,
is he in the chat room posting those deep purple photos?
Yep.
Well, I'm sure he will be now that you brought it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of masturbatory material there, Bob.
Well, that's Bartek for you. What are you going to do? Love giving that guy shit.
Nice.
All right, Bob. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you come on. And, sorry to, things have fallen apart here as far as the, screening. But, we'll bring it back around as soon as we get the all clear.
Absolutely, and you guys will be the first to know. So once we get some new dates, and once this, I agree with you. I think I heard you guys earlier saying that when you were talking to Eric that you were thinking around June things should start to settle down. Hopefully, we'll see. As long as people, keep their social distancing, we should be fine. Just play it safe, people. Seriously, be safe out there, and. We will definitely we'll be back, and we'll probably do one in LA and Vegas, and a few of them. I just hope we could do it before the DVD actually comes out, because then it won't be as exciting. We want to give people a preview. That's what the premiere is supposed to be. So, but we'll what it is what it is. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
And let's not forget the one we've talked about at Pinball PA, Bob. The
screen.
Oh yes. Because that's the one we got to have. The one at Pinball PA is the big one.
I would love to do one there. If we could set something up, set up a big screen. We'll talk about it. We'll do it. I don't even have to be there. I would love to come out for it, obviously. But, once you guys open back up and get things going, I love doing that. I love doing it at businesses. We've done some great ones in the past at the Soho House, which is like a private, exclusive kind of club that has like a little theater in there, and we've done a couple there, and Neeley was at the ones we did at the Attic, the Attic.
Yeah,
you came down, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a theater. We don't like doing them at nightclub. We've had a lot of offers to do them at nightclubs, and the Attic was about as close as we got, but they had like a screening room there, and that was right in Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard. So great location, but the problem with bars, it gets too noisy and you can't hear. And even with the Attic, a lot of people had problems, saying, they couldn't hear it,
Right.
with all the background noise and stuff. So, but yeah, your place,
Oh, well, I'll talk to the owner. I think I can convince him to take care of it.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll definitely talk about that. Absolutely. I would love to, man.
Sounds good.
All right, Bob, as always, it's a pleasure. So I'll let you pick a track to take us out of this segment. So what would you like me to play for you?
Let's see here. It's been, which I've been listening to, the first Malice record, In the Beginning. I was listening to that last week. And you got Gods of Thunder handy?
Well, let me pull it up here.
Did I that one before with you? I can't even remember.
Malice, Gods of Thunder?
In the Beginning.
Malice in the Beginning, you said?
Yeah, it's an MD album.
Oh.
The album.
Gods of Thunder is a song.
Oh, okay. Malice, Gods of Thunder. Okay. Let me see if I got,
You got it.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, there we go.
He got everything, man.
I got it, man. All right.
Look at those. All right.
All right.
All right, gentlemen. We will thank you again for having me on. Always a pleasure being on the CMS.
All right, Bob. You're always welcome back anytime. So, well, here it is for Bob. This is Malice, Gods of Thunder, exclusively here. Where, Bob?
On your classic metal show.